everyone, it's Emily and Jon Meyers from Write Better Together, and we have a special announcement. We are going to have a very special guest for our Christmas Eve episode.
Oh, that must be why I'm ringing this bell like I'm at the Salvation Army. It doesn't sound like the Salvation Army.
It does.
We have a very special guest for our Christmas Eve, December 24th episode. Judy Go Wong, the author, the actress. You know her from Veep and House of Cards and so many other things. Her latest book is Lights, Camera, Action, Secrets to Master On-Camera Presence Like a Pro. She teaches you makeup. She teaches you presence, like how to... you think Emily and Jon Meyers have presence. She will teach you to have real presence on the camera. And we're so looking forward to her. We're honored that she's going to spend our Christmas Eve with us.
And she's going to be talking about being a Christian creative in Hollywood, as well as why therapy is important this time of year.
Yes.
So we're very excited, and we hope you join us.
Welcome, everybody, to Write Better Together. I'm Jon Meyers. Hey, look, everybody, it's Emily plus some other person. Brooks.
The unseen visitor. I don't know.
We already had one of your imaginary friends on as a guest, but now this is a real... We can't see her. We don't even know it's a her, but this is a real it is a person. It's a real person who's here, not an imaginary person. Are you gonna name this child Iki in honor of in honor of your imaginary friend?
Anyway,
I'm saying she. My friends,
you're willing it into existence.
My friends disagree with my right to say she, but too bad. And then they're like, hey, you can't declare what gender her baby is. I'm like, oh, I am.
My sister-in-law calls the baby a he, so she's doing the same thing but opposite. So who has the stronger willpower?
Me, I do. And then someone else said, I can't, like... You did not tell that baby to start kicking Emily. That is not, because I said I could interview the baby, and then the baby could kick once for yes and twice for no. You're like, don't tell that baby to kick Emily.
1 second, Jon has a question. I've seen them in the car before.
A surprise guest. The maintenance guy spraying for bugs.
If Jon, my husband, is the maintenance guy, which... you could say he's taken the week off and is getting the house like already 8 months or not 8 months, 7 months in advance.
Wow, you can have two babies. He'll have the house so ready you can have one now and have one 8 months from now.
Oh, now my dad's calling me.
This is like an episode of Full House.
Oh my goodness.
Fuller House, fullest house.
Anyway, I'll just have to tell him to wait. He'll call Jon and it'll be fine. Anyway.
What are we talking about this week?
Well, we have quite the list.
Oh.
So we thought it'd be fun to talk about our writing processes. And so today I'm going to be talking about my writing process for the most recent book that I wrote, but also how it compares to other projects I've done and what I've learned from it.
Wow.
So not necessarily telling you like this is how you should do it, but it's just my experience and how it worked for me.
I finally get to know about this book that my writing partner has written that I've never read a single word of.
I will send it to you. I've got some like prose things that I want to adjust, but the story is done. The story's done. But yeah. Before that, we're going to have listener responses as always.
Yes. We're
going to give you a call to action based on today's topic.
Oh, I hope you got that ready.
Nope, completely forgot about it, so we'll have to wing it.
Ask the baby. Baby Brooks. Should the call to action be kick once for... Is it kicking time yet?
Oh my goodness. No, not yet. We got more time for that.
Continue.
Then we're gonna have Hey Jon Meyers segment where I teach Jon Meyers something, and then we're gonna have a silly game where Jon Meyers plays a game that I have prepared for him. But first, how did we get out of our bubble?
So, I went to the mailbox.
That's not a story, Jon Meyers.
We should have some merch that says, that's not a story.
It was like the first episode when you were like, going to your mailbox is not a story. And then 2 or 3 times now you've started a story with going to your mailbox.
but it's not a story. That's it's going to be on tote bags pretty
So
soon.
is that it?
That no, I something was in the mailbox,
Oh,
but it's not a story because there were no obstacle. Like I'm the protagonist, right? I had a goal to get the mail. I have to duck out of here, sing a song or something while I duck out. I'm not leaving. I'm just ducking out of camera.
I hear Winnie tip taps. Winnie.
I'm back.
All right, what you got?
Our friend Rachel Caldecott
Oh, you got the
um
book.
did an anxiety relieving adult coloring book,
That's awesome.
and it's beautiful. I'm flipping through it and not showing the camera, so people driving in the car at home, it's beautiful, and it's scenes of her small town in France, and
Mm,
but it's very intricate. Like here, like look how intricate. Like that will be so fun to do. That will be
yeah.
so fun to do that one, right? And but they're all like that. But I wanted to show you the people. Let me find one with people. Oh, there's some beautiful cacti. This is so good, Rachel. So it just came, and I haven't reviewed it yet. So I'm gonna review it. I'll review it on the Amazon, and we'll put it a link to the show notes in the Amazon.
Yes,
But
for sure.
look at see
I
those
love
people that
that.
she drew.
I love that.
They kind of look like this woman.
They
Ah,
do.
they look
They
like they
they
belong in the same family.
they do.
What do you think about that,
It looks
Emily?
like the for listeners, the people she drew kind of looks like it's the same, like similar style as the woman on the front of our book cover.
Yeah, and it took her 2 years to make that coloring book. She didn't know what our book cover was going to look like when she
That's
made that.
funny.
That
Well, way to go. That looks so amazing. I love that.
me too. How'd you get out of your bubble?
Well, I don't remember.
Oh, okay.
For real, I like just forgot to prepare anything for this part. I went to the vet.
You took your baby to the vet? What? That's the wrong doctor. You do need
Oh,
some
I know what I was going to talk about.
you need some
I
parenting
know
lessons
I
if you're
know
taking your baby to the vet.
I know what I was going to talk about.
Well,
So, I
wait, I want to
uh
distract you one more time before you tell your story. What, so we announced the baby last week, right? That you and your husband are having a baby, but then the baby is not visible. It's a week. Like I thought babies came in 1 week because
the
the 1 week
one
baby,
week baby
according
book.
to this book, I read this racy thing and it says I could get a baby in a week. You're
Wasn't it
telling
like
me I gotta wait
supposedly
till May?
yeah. Anyway, I got out of my bubble by um so my sister and her kids don't live in a neighborhood. So they came over to our house to trick or treat in the rain, and everybody got really wet, but it was so much fun because you don't get to trick or treat when you like when you're older, and so we got to trick or treat with my sister's kids, and it was really sweet.
Were you a son? Did you dress up as something?
No, but it was really just I was glad to see how the neighbors were still getting into things. There was like this couple that they dressed up as Charlie Brown and Lucy, and they had the booth,
The kissing booth?
the kissing booth,
Oh my
and they
goodness.
had that to give out candy from their garage, and I thought that was really adorable. So like people are still getting into it and um providing this stuff for the kids, and I thought that was really sweet.
Emily, it's not the kissing booth. It's the doctor is in. She's a psychologist.
Oh,
And I went, the kissing booth? And you're like, yeah.
yeah, I just
Lucy and Charlie Brown kiss all the time. What the heck?
wasn't there a kissing booth at one point though?
Maybe in like Archie and Betty and Veronica, but not on Charlie Brown.
Sorry, I had one of those brain moments where I just like, sure,
Well, I said it. And
whatever. I guess sounds weird, but sure. Um, that's
Snoopy
all.
would kiss Lucy on the nose sometimes.
But I mean, Halloween was forever ago for you guys. Now you're all like in Christmas mode.
It's December 10th.
So you're not even thinking about Halloween anymore.
Chestnuts roasting on an open fire.
Getting excited listening to the Christmas music.
You did a character in the last episode where you're like, "Oh, I don't know." Like, do you remember that character?
Yeah.
I want to hear that character say, "Why are we talking about Halloween on December 10th?"
Oh, why are we talking about Halloween?
Dude, does that character kind of
That's
sounds
all.
like the
That's all.
the
That's
comic
all
book
you
guy
get.
on The Simpsons? A little bit.
So we also have listener responses.
Where shall we start?
Well, I do have a video to share from
Oh.
Misty Butler.
And after that one, I have one that ties in to what we talked about earlier. Imagine that. Oh, look at that. She had a baby since
Hi,
last week.
everyone. It's Misty with Write Better Together. And as you can see, I'm not at any exciting destination today. I'm just at my home in Southern Kentucky. This is Daisy. So recently I was looking back over some past episodes of Write Better Together, and I stumbled upon episode 6, which was about Jon Meyers and Emily Brooks' favorite advice for writers. Something I really connected with in this episode was the piece of advice they gave to set goals, which Jon Meyers calls objectives, but to set goals that you can control. And I loved that because all around me, I see people setting their 3-year, 5-year, 10-year goals. And sometimes it's things like buy a house by this age, get married by this age, have X number of kids by this age. And so much of that is out of our control. And if you carry that over into writing, even in that field, there's so much we can't control. We can do our best work, and that doesn't necessarily mean that a publisher's going to jump on it, or it might not be the publisher we want, or we might not sell the number of books we want. And especially when we're dealing with people, whether that's editors, publishers, writers, or just people we interact with on a daily basis, we can't control their perception of us. So Jon Meyers and Emily Brooks suggested to set goals that we can control, like I'm going to make this book better than the last. I'm going to enjoy this process more than I did with the first round. So what are some goals you have for your current projects? What are some goals you think you might need to adjust so they'll line up better with things that are within your control? So drop your goals or objectives in the comments at Write Better Together.
She has the biggest yard.
I noticed she was wearing one of those bracelets.
Yeah.
From our episode,
Trades of Hope.
Yeah, from Trades of Hope, she showed us some bracelets that are probably still available on the website. I love that, and actually it ties in really well to today's topic. But first, well, did you have any other responses to that?
And so I was talking to Lori Twitchell yesterday, and I kept using the word goals, and she was like aware of the same thing that Misty pointed out. Like, you don't use that word. I'm like, I know. I don't know why I'm using that word. And but Misty's 100% right that and that's why I don't use the word, right? Because you don't own a house yet, or you haven't had the baby yet, or whatever. You've just by setting a goal, you set yourself up for failure. But if you're working towards buying a house, then you're achieving something towards your objective every day. It's you enjoy the process. And as far as having a baby, well, you're living proof that it can happen, and this book is living proof that it can happen in only 1 week. The 1 week baby.
I like that because it's about the direction you're going more than where you're ending up. It's journey before destination, which is another thing we talked about in that episode from Brandon Sanderson. So yeah, it's all about that process more than just where you end up and who you become in that process.
Yes, I agree 100%.
So we also have a response from Bethany
Hale, who came by the Southern Festival of Books.
Yes.
Amongst the 4,000 million trillion other people. And she dropped a piece of flash fiction upon us.
Yes.
Into the flash fiction bucket based on the CoverGirl book, who we pointed out earlier that matches Rachel Caldicott's style in her coloring book. So everything's connected. Bethany didn't know when she wrote this story that it was going to match.
It's like you planned it.
Well, but I didn't even know Rachel was writing a coloring book till 3 days ago. So would you like to hear what Bethany Hale wrote about this young woman? Okay.
Go ahead.
In other news, we had a responder on YouTube to the Lucy V. Hay episode.
I
And
was joking. You're going to read it, right?
I know I was going to go back to it.
Okay.
I was pretending like you weren't joking. And that was from the Lundra Alliance. Do we know the Lundra Alliance?
I don't.
I don't know the Lundra. We do now. They're friends of the show. They loved the show, and they specifically loved the Lucy episode about mental health, making mental health work for you. And Lucy V. Hey, wow, this was amazing. I relate to Lucy so much and some of the mental health things that she mentioned. This was really insightful, and that's a good final exercise too. What's the worst that can happen? Remember that her call to action? And
Yep.
so we need to revisit that one. And I told the Lundra Alliance the same thing. Like, well, tell us what, like, do I like that you liked that call to action. Now go do it and report back to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So you insist that I read this thing from Bethany Hale. Better be good after all this delay, right? Should I hold? I should hold this up. Now that I spent 5 minutes putting it back up on the shelf.
So, for listeners, first of all, I hope you know the cover of her book, but the cover of her book has an image of a woman. She is leaning on a desk and has her hand on her chin, is looking upward, and there's also a laptop on her desk.
She sits and stares out the window pane, avoiding the crisp blank page on her computer screen, picturing her story unfolding on a different kind of blank canvas.
Ooh, Bethany. That was good. I've done that many times.
What does she win?
Um,
This octopus glass.
yes.
What kind of glass is it? I taught you last episode.
I forgot the word for it.
It's a highball glass.
Oh, okay.
But we don't drink, so we wouldn't remember that. That's all the viewer responses I have. Now back to you, Emily.
So today we're talking about my process for writing my most recent book, and what's interesting is all of those responses actually relate in some way. So I was okay. So here's my process, or the journey that I went on is I started writing when I was young. I wrote and rewrote a novel from like 12 to 16 that was a fantasy novel that I didn't really plan a lot for that one. Or sorry, I didn't outline. I didn't have a formula or anything. I just would do exactly what Bethany was talking about. I wouldn't even look at the page when I was brainstorming. I would go out on my back swing because we had like a swing set and swing and imagine things in the story, and then I would sit down and write it. Now I'm such an outliner, that's crazy to me, but it was a very simple storyline. And same thing with my second book that I wrote as a teenager, which was a inspirational romance. And I also didn't outline that one, but I do remember like thinking through it. Then I stopped writing novels because I went to college and learned how to write short stories. When I was in grad school, I decided that I wanted to write fantasy again. I like the imaginative elements of fantasy, so I wrote a fantasy novel for my thesis. So that one took a lot of outlining, but the process was so different because I was in grad school, where it was somewhat rushed, but honestly, that was probably good for me to have those deadlines. I think I ended up turning out a 60,000 word book and then later turned it into a 120,000 word book. So what I actually gave my professors was not the finished version at all, but that's fine.
So the one that's in the archive is the 60,000?
Yes.
Wow.
And for some reason, people are downloading that, and I don't know why.
I'm not. I haven't seen a word.
I don't want anybody to read it. It's not the full version.
Is it a full story?
It is full. It is a complete story. It's just that I really fleshed it out more.
It's not the story. It's a story.
It's the same premise, same like trajectory. Just I added a lot of characterization, and so a lot of times my initial drafts don't have as much character depth, and then when I go back and revise them, I add a lot of that. That's not something that I prefer. It just sometimes happens. And then the world building, I spent a lot more time describing things in the final version. So yeah, because it was also my first fantasy novel that I'd written since being a kid. And it just takes a lot more to develop the setting and everything that I ended up just adding a lot more to it. So then I wrote a middle grade novel. I'm just going through, these are the different processes that I've done. The middle grade novel, I decided that I would not have an outline and I would just wing it. And that did not go well because in my case, I feel like I needed direction. And sometimes like I thought that I could write up to a certain point, and then basically what I did was I wrote up to a certain point and then outlined the rest. But then I couldn't settle on what I actually wanted the story to be, and so I ended up rewriting it and like not completely rewriting it, but like changing, doing major changes, and then finally was just like, I don't know what I want this story to be. It was never really fully realized to begin with, and so I just stopped working on it. And then I got to the one that I wrote a couple. The most recent one I wrote, I think I started writing it in 2022. No, yes, yeah, I think 2022. And what got me going was actually I was feeling very discouraged. I was feeling like I don't know where to start or what to write or why I'm writing. Like I may never ever get published. And then I was inspired by exactly the tips that Misty just mentioned about journey before destination, having these objectives that are in your control rather than outside of your control. And I was like, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to look into the publishing industry. I'm not going to do research on agents. I'm not going to do anything while I write this novel. I'm going to write a novel that is fun for me to write, that I enjoy writing, and I'm just going to have fun being a writer. And that's what I needed. I don't want to just hog this conversation, so feel free to like jump in at any point if you're like, "Oh yeah, I do this thing." Has anything related to you so far?
Yeah, but I was waiting. I was waiting for a break. Like you're not. It's not. You're not hogging it. It's you're telling your story. I can't add to you telling your story about your process. Is this what? And this my first question, which
Yeah.
you're going to answer later, I imagine. Is this the thing that you pitched at WriterCon?
Yes.
Okay, and then my so that's my for later question when you get to the end of the process. At the beginning of the process, where did the initial spark of the idea come from?
So, multiple things. That's a good question.
That's what we do here.
I have a notebook where I've written down a bunch of ideas, and so I was scouring the notebook and looking for things to combine. So a lot of times if an idea isn't sticking, it's like, well, how can I combine it to this other idea I had and maybe together they work. So I was watching a documentary like for years ago. And it's like was so long ago that I can't even remember what animal it was, but I think it was like penguins or fish. Maybe it was fish that had to, oh, I think it was fish that lived near, it wasn't octopi, octopuses. um I think it was these creatures, whether they were fish or crabs or something, that no, it wasn't a deer, that had to basically risk their lives every day just to get food because
Oh,
they lived near those hot spots in the ocean that
mm-hmm.
like it gets really really hot, and so to get their food they had to like risk those really high temperatures. I think that's what it was. But I like to take things from nature and apply it to like, well, what if humans had to do that? So I thought, what if humans had to risk their lives to get food? Obviously, this is something that prehistorically, like people had to do. But like, what if I took that to the extreme? And then there are a few things that combined here. The other thing was I was watching the Mission Impossible series with my husband, and I liked the adventurous aspect of that and like the characters solving complex problems. And so it's like, okay, I kind of like taking that pacing a bit into a story. And then the third one was one of my favorite movies as a kid was Balto. Have you seen Balto, Jon Meyers?
The short.
No, the cartoon.
I know, but it's a short, right? It's not a full film, or am I talking about
It's
something different?
it's a full length cartoon about the sleigh dogs.
No, I have not seen this.
Okay, so this was my favorite movie as a kid, and it holds up. Like, I've watched it multiple times as an adult. I love it. I believe it's Universal Studios, and it's the story of a wolf slash husky dog. He's like both. He's like a hybrid. Nobody wanted him. He was an outcast. He wasn't quite a wolf. He wasn't quite a snow dog. And but this town, everybody in the town starts getting sick, especially the children. And they have to, because they're in Alaska and there's this tiny, tiny part of Alaska, they have to send people on their sleigh dogs, like on their with their sleigh dogs on their sleds to go fetch medicine for the kids. And it's based off of a true story. And because like the trains are shut down, the boats are shut down, all this stuff because of a weather super like winter storm. And Balto ends up being the one who leads the sleigh and helps save the children. And what I loved about that was the high stakes of like survival, and then the adventure of like the fetch adventure of like we have to go get this thing and bring it back. So I took all of those things and was like, okay, I want survival elements, I want adventure, I want high stakes, I want suspense, I want characters solving problems. And so the story became I didn't want to do the same thing as Balto in the frosty environment, which I almost did. I decided to go tropical. So they're on an island, and the food that they rely on is in the ocean, surrounded by these fantastical sharks. So it's a fantasy novel. And the only way that they can survive is if they are continually hunting these fish.
Okay, so
I'm not going to.
now I
Yeah,
will
go ahead.
interrupt. So your step one was very intentional, where you like, I took this element from here, this element from here, this element from here, and as opposed to someone who's like saw something when you first said that you like to see things in nature and then apply them to humans. I thought that you were going to go down the road of what if, because a lot of people's stories start with what if
Yeah,
uh,
that's
uh,
that's
a human did the same thing as magpie, a bird or whatever. And then, but in your case, there was a little bit of what if, but then it was intentional. I want these 8 aspects or these 8 elements. And it sounds like you had a list even to make sure that you had the.
sort of like yeah, I don't think I ever wrote it down. It was just like these were the things that were inspiring me at the moment, and like I was trying to think of what sounds fun for me to write right now. And I also the other element was I wanted it to be a somewhat simple plot because the other stories I had written had a lot of like intrigue and complex backstory and all this stuff, and I really wanted to write something that I don't know that simple's the word, but something that wasn't so complicated where it's the characters have to do this thing, like that's a story.
So
And
the goal is simple,
the
but
goal is
the
yeah,
obstacles are not simple at all.
right, but there's not like multiple layers to it necessarily. There is some mystery involved, there's some problem solving involved, there's a lot of like we don't know why this and this, and it would be really good if we could figure that out. Like for instance, they don't know why they need this food.
Who's they?
The characters,
They don't know
the
why they need
the
a
people,
specific food.
right.
Got it.
They know that they will die if they don't have this specific fish. So I'm trying to think what the next part was because I knew that I wanted them to go on a journey. I will say, I think I started writing a little bit just to get into the world before I outlined the whole thing in detail. Like I had a vague outline, but then it was once I started like writing, because I sometimes come up with better ideas as I'm writing. So I started writing a little bit and then fleshed out the outline, which was very simple at first. I ended up re outlining it later and making it more complex. By
And,
that, I mean adding more like character growth
and
elements.
this part was happening in grad school at the same time.
No, 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 no. This was in 2022.
Oh, okay. This is before grad school. No, This is after grad
No,
school.
I graduated grad school.
This is after grad school. Sorry.
I graduated in 2019.
No, I know.
Okay.
I meant to say it was after grad school and
Yeah.
before it
Oh.
came out. So, but this is the same book. No.
No, this is a brand new book that I started writing in 2022.
Okay. Sorry.
I only mentioned the other one just to show how my process has changed.
I got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Sorry.
you're fine. You're fine.
Continue.
Yeah. So this was a long enough ago that I'm trying to remember my outline process. I think what I tried to do was I looked at so I learned about like formulas and stuff in college, like in screenwriting class. But I tend to not settle on just one. I tend to kind of like look at what are the elements that I want to have in the story that work best for the story, and what are like the things that my characters need to accomplish. But I also knew that as an adventure story, the middle was going to be who knows. I think I could have actually outlined the middle more in retrospect, because the middle I kind of just left with like they cross the ocean and adventures ensue. They might run into these things and encounter these problems, but I hadn't like fully fleshed that out. Because
So
again, sometimes,
when you say the
yeah.
middle, do you mean the midpoint or the middle of what the midpoint would be in the middle of Act 2? But do you mean all of the middle of Act 2 or the specific midpoint that you should have fleshed out more?
So mostly Act 2, because like the characters would have already like they've taken on their calling, they've taken on the mission, they've decided to set out, and then everything that happens after that until the ending, I was like, I don't know. I knew there would be like some sea monsters or something, but I knew that my best ideas often come when I'm writing, so I didn't want to flesh it out too much. Other people would probably feel differently. I kind of, again, in retrospect, wish I ended up writing some chapters that were exploratory, and then I had to just choose which direction for them to go. And so,
were you stuck, or you were fiddling around?
I was fiddling around,
okay.
or like I would wrote the chapters, and then it was later that I was like, I don't think these are really not necessary. Let's focus on this thing instead. Basically, this has gone through a lot of revisions, so I'm talking about the beginning process, but like later I went and really like, okay, each chapter needs to have this focus on this character and what they're learning, and the first draft didn't really have that, because I'm more exploratory in my first drafts. Now I've outlined differently. I like to look at how are the characters growing in each draft, but that initial in that story, I wasn't doing that as much as I now would have done, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Because there are five main characters that go on this journey, and I did not know who they were or what their deal was until I was writing them. And nowadays,
that does not sound like you at all.
Now I would definitely, I mean, I knew vaguely. I put like, here's their main problem, here's their main problem. Like I did it kind of vaguely, but now I go into much more detail. And in my other revisions of the book, I went into much more detail, and I have each of them has a character arc. I try to show their personalities more through their dialogue. But that first draft, I was just writing for fun and just exploring.
So I'm going to throw a compliment in here for you. So you're saying all of this as if you're on the other side of your 35th novel, and like here was part of the process, but this just started in 2022. We're recording this in November of 2024. Look at how much you've grown in 2 years or less than 2 years. That's remarkable. And there are people watching this who have not grown that much in 2 years. So I want you to address them. And because they need a pep talk, because they're like, whoa, look at all she's done in 2 years. And then I want your response to, dude, that you are saying things. I mean, we don't know what we don't know yet, right? But you are saying things that when I listen to some guy who's on his 10th novel or whatever, I discovered this while writing novel number 11. Well, you're saying that you've already discovered it on what is potential
Four,
novel
five,
number 4.
five.
Yeah, or novel number 5, and you learned it all in the last 2 years. Speak on that.
So get feedback, really. I tend to just in my experience, my first drafts tend to be just a bit like skinny, like a little bit bony, and then I flesh them out. And what I kind of have learned from that experience is I like to outline more now. The novel that I'm working on now is like way more heavily outlined, although I haven't finished the outline because I made a really complicated story. Which is why I like this other book, this book that we're talking about now. I needed to write a simpler story because it made it just a lot more fun. Anyway, part of it was I read more books on storytelling. I got feedback. I actually ended up paying for some feedback from a woman who was helping me with my query and helping me with my first page and stuff like that. And she like helped me transform. She was the one just by reading the first page and the outline and the synopsis was able to point out the problems in my story
Yeah,
and
you
tell
talked
me
about
that
that in a
yeah,
previous episode.
yes. And she told me that the characters needed to be fleshed out more in their motivations. And so that's where the more recent drafts I've gone in and really fleshed out every single character. So I learned how to do that. And she was the one who recommended the science of storytelling, which really helped me to do that, which is why I recommend it all the time now.
So you said books, you said the writing coach, your version of Dr. Cindy, whoever your person was, and then how did grad school help you? Because this is all post grad school.
So because grad school was the first time where I had written a novel since being a teenager, like that was a big part of like gaining the confidence that I could write a novel, especially like writing a novel when you're also super busy. So confidence in that. I learned a lot about prose in grad school and my particular quirks that now when I'm writing, I still catch myself doing them and hear the feedback of other like peers or my professor in my head. And then I fix it because I'm like, oh yeah, they said this. So there's a lot of feedback that I got that I still apply regularly.
So that's what. So I didn't want to interrupt, but so I was going to
Yeah,
say,
go for it.
I imagine that grad school taught you how to assimilate feedback into your work, because it's a giant
Definitely.
2-year feedback loop.
Absolutely. Yeah. And knowing what to take and what not to take and going with your gut and then like yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Was there anything you
continue.
wanted to add to that?
No, continue. And you met me. There you go.
Yeah, for sure. Where was I? So kind of had a rough outline, started writing. I think I actually wrote the book in 3 months, which is like pretty good for me because I set
That's
myself
good for anybody.
I
That's
actually
amazing.
set myself word count goals every day, which was also partly why it wasn't as fleshed out because I've noticed that when I set word count goals, I will get that thing written, but it's not quite as like the prose is a little weak. The I'm just like getting the story out. And sometimes that's because, and I said this in a previous episode, the Shannon Hale the Shannon Hale quote about throwing sand in a sandbox to turn into castles. It's like I kind of was just like, I'm throwing sand in a sandbox and I want to have the story out so that I can revise it and make it better. Some people don't do that. I'm actually curious about your process that they will work on this chapter will be perfect before I move to the next chapter and the prose will be perfect and it'll do exactly what I wanted it to do.
Well, we'll talk about when we talk about my process in a future
Yeah.
episode. But no, so I don't write in order, first of all, so I can't
Yeah.
have the thing where I got to get this chapter right before I go on to the next one. But the outline does all the heavy lifting and does all the furniture moving. And so when I'm actually writing the screenplay, or even with my novel that's not finished, the writing part is just fun because all the
Yeah.
work's done in the outline for me.
Will we have Matthew on before or after this episode comes out? Do you remember?
No, I don't remember. I think it's
Well,
no. I think it's. I'm 99% sure it's before, but I
okay.
don't. I would not
Because
swear.
Matthew has a really interesting process that he calls like the 7-layer
Oh,
story.
he told me. It
So
it's similar to mine. I mean, it's not the same as mine, but it's
yeah.
similar to mine.
So we'll talk about that on that episode because I think it's
Sure.
a really interesting way to do it. Everybody's different. Again, this isn't supposed to be prescriptive. It's just like this is how I do it. I think and my process changes every time. Like sometimes I am more about just going to get through this so that I can revise it later and sometimes I am a bit more I drill down into this chapter has to be perfect. But
So
it's
in the
helpful for me to just move through it because that keeps my momentum up to just get the story done. Because I'm sorry, I'm not trying to interrupt you, but with the most recent novel that I wrote, and I can get more into this later. The most recent novel that I've been working on, actually, I had a major momentum going up. I wrote about 30,000 words, I think, and then I got stuck because I started overthinking it. Whereas this other novel, because I had that word count goal, actually, I got stuck because I had horrible eye strain and had to take a couple months off or a month off. And then it was Christmas and, uh, but this one I had the word count goal and I wanted to finish it before the end of the summer. And that actually really helped me just to get it all out. And again, it took several revisions to get it to where it is now, but at least I had that momentum to get through that first draft. And I think that's super important for me.
So you kind of answered what I was going to ask you, but so you have to keep the forward momentum
Yeah.
going. And you said you gave yourself a daily word count.
Yeah.
Was that every day for the 3 months?
Yeah.
And did you write every day during that 3 months?
No.
And do you know where I'm going with this?
Well, no.
In the previous episode, 7 days ago, you made a commitment to write every day and you were going to report back to us.
Yeah.
And I was supposed to ask you about that in host chat and I didn't. So I'm going to ask you now, how'd you do?
So the timeline on this is funny because it's for us it's only been a week.
Right. And a
Well,
month and
so
a
one,
half
I
for
don't
the
write on
viewers.
Sundays, and I forgot to mention that. I will write
Oh,
on
yeah.
Sundays if I feel like it, but I will not obligatorily write on Sundays. So I wrote every day, and it was really
Yay.
good.
Good job.
Well, except for yesterday. And I am ashamed. I had a really
You
rough
should be. How terrible. Yeah, you get, get that baby out here. I need a different co-host. How dare you skip a day? I mean, come on. That
I
was
really
good because you weren't doing what you wanted to be doing, and now you did 6 out of 7 or 5 out of 7 if you
Yeah,
count
no, it
Sunday.
really did help. I actually started working on the other novel, which I really want to work on, but I've just been really stuck. So it's been hard for me to motivate myself. I worked on my blog. My family had a spooky story Halloween contest.
And you won that.
It wasn't actually a contest. We just shared spooky. It was a 2-sentence story contest. So my family, we all wrote 2-sentence stories. So I did that.
Wow.
And so that was fun. So it was really good. Yesterday was just a off day of I don't know if it's pregnancy brain or what, but it was just like I could not focus on anything and I had all this grading to do and so
So when you got stuck, or you're it's on the new one, so you're still in the outline process.
I did it was just like I was just challenging myself to write as much as I possibly could when I did this book. And what worked with the last book, the one that we've been talking about, that didn't work with this current one, is the current one is really complex. And I wrote an outline, but I didn't write it in detail once it got past a certain point because I didn't know exactly how it was going to work. With the other story, I could get away with that because it was, well, there's going to be some monsters or something. Whereas the other one is there's a lot more intrigue and governmental things that I was like, I'm going to need more time on that. And so I just got stuck with that where I know what I want my characters to do, but I don't know how they're going to do it. The world is much more complex. I think I've just taken on a really big challenge and it's been difficult for me to get back into it. So that's why I've taken a break and have been writing some short stories instead, and really focusing on my blog. And we wrote a book. So it's not like I'm not writing, but I had to set that one aside for a little bit and figure out what it needs to be.
So, can I give you what I do when I get stuck?
Yes,
It's
please.
it's super short and super easy. So I don't get stuck writing the book. That's why I asked if you got stuck during the outline or not, because I already have every problem solved during the
Yeah.
outline. Now it might take a while, and so I don't want to paint a picture that it's easy. And William Martell does that too. He is also like I am in that we write a log line first, and the log line needs to be bulletproof before we continue. Now,
Yeah.
the log line that you might use to pitch your script 2 years from now, that might be a little bit different because your stuff changed during the process. But again, it's like your outline. You wrote it, you're allowed to change it, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't change that much if it's your bulletproof story right there in 2 lines. It doesn't change that much. And I know some people disagree with that and some people don't do it that way, but it keeps you on focus. So if I am stuck and I have 14, 16 characters, but if I'm stuck and I know which characters have to be in this next scene, and in my case it is a scene, not a passage, because it's a screenplay. um, I will take those people, the next people that have to be there, the next characters, and put them in the most craziest, outlandish, nonsensical situation that's still within that story world, but like just crazy, like whatever you like, the most far-fetched, there's no way it could ever happen. And then you see how they respond to this turned up to 11 impetus, and 9 times out of 10 there's something in there that comes back to earth, it gets grounded again back in the story. And sometimes it's the exact same scene, only the weird whatever thing that happened, the impetus isn't there, but they're saying and doing the same things to something more normal and grounded in their story world.
Yeah.
Just give them the craziest thing that would never happen. And
Yeah.
every once in a while you'll surprise yourself and be like, oh, I can see how this could happen.
Yeah.
That skeleton could come to life.
That is really good advice. One of the problems is, you know how you said you write things out of order? I've
Yeah.
written this book somewhat out of order. And also I haven't finished going through so like the parts that I have outlined in detail, I haven't even written all of that yet because I got overwhelmed that I hadn't finished outlining the more complex parts and was like, that's going to affect the rest of this. And so I just need to go through and solve all the problems. Like you said, like really dig into the outline more, flesh out exactly what's going to happen. The other thing that I forgot about until just now, the book that we've been talking about, I should just call it's I've been calling it The Last Divers of Omera. This current one is called Conjuring Laurel. Conjuring,
Oh.
so uh it's very different from from The Last Divers of Omera. So The Last Divers of Omera, I did not have a single person look at that book while I was writing it. Conjuring
So
Laurel, I had my writing group read the first chapter, and while they liked a lot of it, they also found it incredibly confusing. And the whole premise of not the whole premise, but a huge part of that book is that there are multiple timelines. And when I realized that's not clear, I was like, do I need to change the whole concept of this book? So I realized that I struggle personally if I get feedback early on in a project to continue that project without feeling like I have to fix everything. So it's actually better for me often to go ahead and just write the thing and then get the feedback.
So, first of all, you said discovering Laurel. You don't even know this, but my last 3
Conjuring Laurel.
sorry. Well, I've actually stole a word out of what I'm about ready to say.
Oh.
So, my last 3 screenplays were Meeting Alexander, Writing Aristotle, and Discovering Caroline. So I started with gerunds on all of them.
That's funny.
And so
I love it.
it rubbed off on you apparently, and you didn't even know. So it's funny that you said that, because so we know an award-winning, big-time published author, and when she turned in her first draft, her agent gave her notes, and she just turned those notes in October, and we're filming this in November. And the feedback that she got on the first one were just loose odds and end notes, right? The feedback she got from the October draft was, we focus grouped it, because that's what this, I'm not going to name the publisher, but that's what the publisher does. And this story was supposed to start on page 154. And we want everything from 0 to 154 to be flashbacks.
Oh my
Same
goodness.
story, and we're not telling you to cut any of it out, but you didn't tell the story in the right way,
Oh my goodness.
according to the focus groups, right? And so she's now doing that, but that's going to take a long time,
Yeah.
because if you remember when Bob Sines talked about the story spine, right? It's going to totally change the spine of the story,
Yeah.
even though it's the same story and all the passages are still the same. It's not just like taking the jigsaw puzzle and putting it together in a different way. It's not.
Yeah. I can't even imagine.
Her point was, and there are times when, hey, if I would have just done this on my own, maybe I don't want this feedback, right? Because
Yeah.
now I'm like, is this going to take me a year? And my publisher is already, where's your book? It was due a year ago, and now it's going to take another year. There are
Yeah.
disadvantages to having a big publisher.
Sure.
So continue.
I think for me, it's like I would either want, just looking forward, I would either want to only send an outline, like before I write, send the outline and have the outline workshopped so I can make sure that's perfect before I start, or just wait until the whole book is done before I ask for feedback. Because it's, and also the times when I've gotten feedback after somebody has read the whole novel is often better than the feedback I get chapter by chapter. The chapter by chapter stuff is really good for like prose and does this make sense and would this character do this thing, that kind of stuff. But sometimes if the readers haven't read the whole thing and they don't know the context, then they might lose something along the way or convince you to do something that you're like, well, I didn't do that. You should keep reading, So that's just been my feeling, is for my momentum to keep going forward. The Last Divers of Omera, I can't even say the title of my book. That book was the best process for drafting that I've ever experienced, because I sat down every day and I wrote it and I kept it in my mind and I had fun. It was the most fun I've had writing, because it was journey before destination. Now, just a few other little things. One, I did change the outline, where I actually ended up changing. I thought I knew how a mystery was going to be solved, and then I changed it because I am an outliner, but I also discover a lot while I write that is better than my outline. I don't know, writing unlocks a different level of creativity than outlining does, and so I came up with better ideas and I went for them. And then the other thing that we've already kind of talked about this, but I'm in like draft 6, and so it's still like, it took a lot of development, and it's also grown. I think it was 60,000 words and now it's 90. So I fleshed it out quite a bit. I've taken a lot of feedback. Some people have read it more than once. So that's where I'm at with that. The most fun that I've had working on a book.
Can I ask my final question about the
Yes.
book?
Yes.
So I'm glad again, it was divinely orchestrated that you wound up on the word count, because that's what I wanted to ask you. So the last one was 60,000. It turned into 120,000. This one was 60,000. Has now grown to 90,000. It's not done yet. Do you have a target? And then, or are you making it just as large as the story? This is a 2-part question, so that's part one. Like, when you get to 90,000, is it done, or is just as large as the story needs to be? That's part one.
So on my other one that was 120, I had some feedback from agents that said this is too long for this, especially for a debut author. So for this one, it's YA, and so I wanted it to be between 60 and 90.
Because that's what the industry does.
Yeah. But also, thankfully, the story itself is pretty contained. Now, I did make a major change where I forgot to mention this. I talked to an agent about the story and I said, okay, right now the story's ending on a cliffhanger. Literally. It's the most literal cliffhanger you can possibly get.
Let me guess, it involves a cliff?
You might be right about that. And she said, you know what? You're going to have a much better time selling this if it's a complete novel. And I agreed with her. And so I ended up adding that whole ending, leaving room for a sequel, but I closed it up. And I'm really glad that I did. I think it's a much stronger novel the way that it is. That added a lot of words, but thankfully the story itself is contained enough that I didn't feel like I was restricting myself in any way to keep it at that word count.
And I agree with that advice. Stories need to end, and we'll talk about that on our webinar that we did 3 weeks ago.
The hardest thing is that to me, it ended the character arc. And so adding more was just like the character had the arc, and I really wanted him to be in a situation in the next book. And now he's not going to be in that situation, which means the next book has to be completely different from what I originally planned. So it was a difficult part, but it was also completely necessary. And now I look back and I'm like, yes, it was 100% the right decision.
Well, because I know how you feel about spoilers, I will avoid spoilers, but this person can have a different arc, can have a new arc if they still exist. I'm not gonna go any further than that. But
it just means that they can't do the thing that I wanted them to do in the next book.
Oh, well.
I had to speed up the second book arc.
Okay, so part 2 of my word count question is, you kind of answered it. So it was both, that it was industry driven. It needs to be between 60 and 90. Don't yawn at my fascinating
I'm
question.
sorry, it's afternoon. I get sleepy.
So it's kind of industry driven, but it was story driven because she made you add the ending onto it. So my novel is going to be this exact same size. I was trying to Google it, and but this is my favorite novel, Trout Fishing in America. It is a novel. You are not allowed to call it a novella. It says right there on the cover, it says a novel by Richard Brautigan, and it is 28,000 some words, and it's exactly 174 pages. I just gave false information. It was exactly 182 pages. So my novel is going to be exactly 182 pages. So as we talk about between us a lot, the cereal box is containing the content, and I knew I wanted it this size because I want women to be able to put it in their purses, or men if they carry purses, and I want people to be able to put it in their back jeans pocket. And so the box dictated the size of the story.
Yeah.
In your case, the industry and the story dictated the size of the eventual book.
Yeah.
Were there any considerations beyond that?
I think, you know how I said I had word count goals?
Yeah.
My goal was to write 60,000 words in a certain amount of time. And then I knew that I am an underwriter, and so that I would make it longer after that.
Oh.
That was my only consideration.
This was interesting. This helped me. I hope it helped our listeners. It helped me. Interesting.
Well, that's good.
It's cool to know someone's process.
Yeah, I learned a lot. It was so much, just the smoothest. I want to sit down and write a book in this exact same way because it was just so smooth.
And now you're going to hand it to me through the fax machine.
Here you go.
Is that you handing me a thumb drive or something?
Yeah.
Nope, I want to print it out with holes in it.
Well, thanks for listening to my process.
And I'm not the only person that listened. Baby Brooks listened as well.
I don't think they can hear yet.
Oh, they can. This baby can. This is a special baby. She can.
You know who else is listening?
God.
Well, you know who else here is listening?
Winnie.
Yeah. She's been snoring next to me.
Aw.
Hey, Jon Meyers.
Yes.
It's that time, isn't it? Am I
Yeah,
skipping something?
sure. No, I don't know.
So people are thinking, they're not thinking about Halloween, they're thinking about Christmas.
Yes. They're
So,
dashing through the snow.
yes. And what are they dashing through the snow? Well, no, that doesn't work.
To grandma's house.
What animal
Oh.
is strongly associated with the season? We've talked about turkeys, not bears.
With Christmas?
Yeah.
The Christmas goose.
No.
Dang.
I mean, you're not wrong, but
I'm ready for
in
Christmas
in
goose. Man.
decorations, in songs,
And it's an animal.
in
A turtle dove.
movies. No, we've talked about doves though in a previous episode.
It's not a goose. It's not a dove. Reindeer.
Yes. Do you know anything about reindeer?
We are not the number one writing podcast for reindeer experts. We're the number one podcast for bird lovers.
It's actually funny to me how many animals
show up on this podcast.
Yeah, I think animal facts are really interesting, and that's what I
Can
came
we?
across.
How do we know if these are reindeer? I'm holding up the book, the Lauren's book again.
Those look like white-tailed deer.
Look how little they are. They look like
little babies.
hamsters.
So
Reindeer.
do you want to learn about reindeer? You don't know.
Do I ever?
You don't know anything about reindeer?
No, I know. I've seen a real reindeers.
So this is kind of similar to my turkey one, where I'm just going to spout off some interesting facts about reindeer because I think it's really interesting. They're actually so unique because they're deer, like they're of the deer species, but they do and have a lot of things that are not deer-like.
Yeah, they can fly.
Exactly. Like already they've won. So first of all,
they won. That was funny.
The idea, so obviously like Santa has the reindeer pull his sled. Well,
yes.
Have you seen Frozen 2?
I think so.
So in Frozen 2, there are reindeer / caribou who lead a sled because they are Frozen 2 is about the Sami people, the like native people of that area, and they actually do historically, like they do use reindeer to pull sleds, which I think is pretty cool. They are the only deer species in which male and females can grow antlers. Normally here, if you see a deer with antlers, it's a buck.
I think I knew that, and they're kind of fuzzy. The antlers are kind of fuzzy.
They're so fuzzy. I always wanted to pet one.
I think I have. I've seen a reindeer up close.
You know what else I've always wanted to pet on a reindeer?
Well, I think there's a reindeer farm between you and me somewhere.
Really?
I think so.
Oh, man. So there's another part of a reindeer that I've always wanted to pet, and that is their nose. Have you ever pet a horse nose?
Yes.
It's like soft.
Yes.
So same thing with the reindeer nose. It's extremely furry to prevent frost from collecting on it. But here's the coolest part about their nose.
Yes.
Because
when you pet it, it turns red. It lights up red.
Yeah. How did you know? So because they're like in such cold climates, you know how when we breathe, you can see our breath?
Yes.
And did you ever watch The Polar Express?
Yes.
You know that scene with all the caribou and their breath? And I was always like, that looks so realistic that they have their breath coming out and everything.
It's not realistic.
It's not realistic. You can't see their breath because they're so good at retaining moisture within them and to keep warm that they don't expel any moisture the way that we do, because it's like a mechanism that keeps them warm. So it's inaccurate to show reindeer with foggy breath.
You have exposed Tom Hanks for the fake news purveyor. America's sweetheart, Tom Hanks. Is there something special about their hair? I think there's something special about their hair.
Is there? What do you know about their hair?
I don't know. I'd like they can swim or something because their hair is hollow. Is that a thing? Or am I making that up?
Oh, I think isn't that bears? Don't bears or sorry, polar bears have like
Well, that might be true too, but there are deer that's true for, but now that since you didn't go, yes, as a matter of fact, that is true. It might have been a different kind of deer and not a reindeer.
I'm reindeer fur is hollow.
Ding, ding, ding. What do I win?
You win something.
I win a reindeer.
You win my free book.
Oh, cool.
They can have an incredible 2,000 hairs per square inch, consisting of dense woolly undercoat and long hollow guard hairs.
Yeah, so they can float. I don't know how I knew that, but that's the one thing I knew about reindeer besides their red nose.
That's amazing. So they're more fascinating than I even knew. But here's another really, really cool thing.
Yes.
Their eyes change color.
I didn't know that.
When the days get really dark and cold, because like in their climate, like the days get really, really short and it gets dark. So their eyes actually change to be like a brighter blue color so that they can take in more light.
I am 99% sure that there is a reindeer farm between me and you, and in my undisclosed location, they brought a reindeer out like to the Christmas parade or something for people to meet. That's happened to me. I just don't remember if it was here or not.
I would love to see a reindeer.
I'm pretty sure
that's my
true.
fact for today.
Cool. No
Facts.
birds involved.
No birds.
What does Whitney say? Whitney. What does Winnie say about that?
She just shivered. I think she's cold.
She heard about you talking about the cold.
She needs more reindeer fur. All right.
Cool.
Well, everybody, thank you so much for listening to us. And before we move on to our silly game, we ask that you write us a review and give us a star rating because that helps other people find us. We just really appreciate you all listening. And also be sure to subscribe if you haven't already so that you can learn more about different animals, apparently.
The Animal Podcast. I had something funny to say during the Ring the Bell, but I can't read my notes on this one.
Oh, no.
So I can't remember. Listeners, tune in next time for when Emily's telling you how to follow and like us, and I'll have something funny to say. I can't remember what it was. And I want to reiterate what Emily closed that with. I want to say every episode how much I appreciate because you can use your time in any way, and you use it with us. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Yeah, it means a lot. All right, here we go. Last thing of the day is the final act. And you will be playing for... Wait, is this how I do it? The order?
Yeah, but you didn't prepare me for this, so...
You will be playing for...
You can do this.
This mug that says, you can do this.
I can. I read our book.
My best friend gave to me while I was in grad school. All right, Jon Meyers, think of a topic.
I said, do I need to prepare?
I know, I
2
forgot.
hours ago.
I forgot to tell you.
And you did. I'm like, can I please prepare ahead of time? All right, I have a topic.
I had a feeling you would.
I am ready.
Because you knew I was going to do this, right?
I was hoping you were going to do this. But like, can I tell you what? Well, go ahead and tell the people what we're doing.
Okay. So the game is... Wiki-How-Do-You-Do-That, Jon Meyers.
Oh, you're turning the tables on me. Oh, good.
If you listened to our episode called I'm a Writer, but you got to see me play this game, and it was so fun that we decided to do it again. But I forgot to tell Jon Meyers to prepare a topic.
Yeah, and I even asked at the beginning, quit whining, Jon Meyers. So my
I was going to say it. I just forgot. We got caught up in talking about the baby.
So the reason that I knew that this episode's December 10th is because my topic was going to be, how do you repair when you ruin the Thanksgiving gravy? Like it was going to be Thanksgiving gravy repair. I know. And just in case you ever pulled this game on me, but it's December 10th. So viewers at home, listeners at home, you're on your own. You've already ruined the Thanksgiving gravy, and you've already either fixed it or went without it. So today I will be explaining to these people with the assistance of these slides, what do you do if you ruin the Christmas goose?
Oh my
Here we
goodness.
go.
Have you cooked a Christmas goose before?
I've been involved in the cooking. I'm not plucking it like in a movie, but I've had goose on Christmas, and I've had a significant other and I helped, but I was the vice president. I was not president in charge of the Christmas goose and a
I've
duck
never
and a
eaten
turkey.
a goose. Okay.
It's
we
good.
always do a turkey. I've never even known anybody to do a goose.
So, real quick, in my family, I grew up with, in Thanksgiving, you had to have 3 meats: turkey, ham, and a third meat. It could be steak, could be meatballs, it could be lasagna that counted as a meat. And I didn't even care for, I'll eat ham, but I don't care for ham. I would not buy a ham. And so I've carried that into my adult life because that's what I grew up with, 3 meats. Well, now that has kind of stretched to Christmas as well. So I have to have 3 meats at Christmas as well because I'm from Chicago and we're meat lovers. And so I've had turkey, goose, duck all in the same thing. All right.
Was it a turducken though?
So I had turducken as well, and but that's a chicken. That's not a goose.
Yeah.
That did not involve the goose.
Alrighty, here we go. So what Jon Meyers is going to do, and I'm sorry for listeners, this is going to be hard to get, but we'll try to explain it. I'm going to be showing him slides from Wiki-How from a existing presentation, but he's going to be using it for his presentation, and he has to utilize the pictures. So first you're going to have to explain to the listeners what you're looking at, and then continue your presentation. So there are 7 slides.
You just apologize for it being so hard. You did a great job. The last time we played this, the first 2 you forgot to describe.
Yeah, I did.
But once you did it, you do a better job than I do at describing the things, but I will try.
I can describe it if you want.
You're good at, like, when I hold up a book, you're good at describing it, and then
Okay.
you describe it, and then I'll tell you how that's repairing the Christmas goose.
Okay, perfect.
And then how many do I got to get right to win the mug?
You didn't last time. What was it last time? You just said do the presentation.
Oh, I know what it was. It was, we can't have an episode of Emily Presents a Game without the rules changing in the middle of it. Yeah, it was, you had to talk through all of them. You had to say a couple sentences through all of them. And then at the end, if I guess what the real
That's what it was. You got an
thing
extra
is,
prize.
it got a second prize.
That's what it was. Okay.
Real goose.
Those are the rules then.
Okay, there you go. Let's go. I'm ready. Christmas goose. Oh my gosh, it has a title. Oh, it has a second title. A presentation by Jon Meyers. Oh.
The first one.
Yes.
Well, here's the thing. I kind of want you to say it because then you can interpret what's going on.
Yeah, so yeah, you're right. Because I actually thought, thank goodness that she has to describe this because I don't know what this guy. So there's a guy handing a woman something that looks like a pickle. And in his hand, he has an envelope. So he's carrying around an envelope full of pickles. And she has a baby. And so, okay, that's my description of it.
You don't really think it's a pickle, do you?
Yeah. What is it?
I think it's money.
Oh, okay.
I'll give you that.
Okay. So he pulled out money out of an envelope and he's handing it to a woman with a baby and they're on a sidewalk. It looks like at a university or downtown somewhere. All right. So he's saying, well, young woman with a baby, I heard about your debacle that you had cooking the Christmas goose and it fell on the floor. So I want you to take this money or this pickle and run down to the corner market and buy the biggest Christmas goose in the window. Of course, she ruined the Christmas goose yesterday. So this is the day after. So it'll be half price because it's the day after Christmas. It's Boxing Day. Okay, there you go. That's what's happening there. Oh my goodness. Are these all the same presentation? You asked me the same thing.
Yeah, they're all the same
Okay.
presentation.
So this is a picture of a person climbing up the side of a mountain with ropes, making sure that this person doesn't fall. For some reason, this person has rock climbing shoes, but no socks on. So the woman with the baby in the previous scenario said, I got a baby on my lap. I'm very comfortable here. I am not going to go to the corner store that's at the top of Mount Vesuvius or whatever. One of the mountains in the background is apparently a volcano because there's steam coming out of it. Maybe that's where they cooked the geese, in the volcano. And so she sent a passerby and said, here, you take this pickle up to the top of the mountain and trade it for magic beans. No, trade it for a goose, because there's a goose at the top of the mountain, like in Jack and the Beanstalk. Of course. All roads lead to Jack and the Beanstalk. So this is
That's
Jack.
amazing. Oh
So
my
this is Jack
gosh.
climbing up the mountain with
To
the
get the golden goose.
to get the golden goose. Boy, is that mom going to be surprised when he comes back down.
Oh, I
Next
love that so much.
slide. Oh my goodness. Collection of nonfiction stories. So there's a woman with red hair, and she's reading collection of nonfiction stories by and the book title is on the back cover. so it's written in Hebrew, where you read from back to front and you read from left to right. So we know a little bit something about this woman. And then we have a painter. Oh my gosh, once upon a time I was a painter. I'm gonna cry. and this painter is painting a death moth. and Jack is not up there. So okay, so these are the centurions that are meant to protect the giant's golden goose. and uh and they're not paying attention. They're like the woman is reading the book and not paying attention. The guy is painting his death moth and not paying attention. Jack's gonna have an easy way to go from here.
Awesome.
Next slide. Oh, this woman is imagining having the hard conversation with I don't know, with a maybe it's a teacher and a student, but there's a woman on the right and a woman on the left, and the woman on the right looks a little bit older than the woman on the left, and the woman on the right is imagining herself or envisioning herself or planning herself scolding the young woman on the left. And I am imagining that this woman is saying, you do not let that boy that's climbing up the side of the mountain anywhere near that golden goose, or heads will roll. Next slide, please. Thank you. Oh, woe is me. We are now in Paris for some reason. And there's a women jogger in Paris being chased by a green check mark. And apparently they have bugs that look like, I don't know, punctuation in Paris. And this is the B story. and then
Oh.
and and then there's a woman to the left of her in a what I'm going to call a thought bubble, and she has either a hangover or a headache. Well, her nose is red, so she probably, I don't want to say the bad word, so she doesn't have the bad word, but she has a very bad cold, so much so that she is imagining a red letter X. How many more slides do I got to tie a bow on this thing?
I don't remember. How many have we done?
Don't know. Next.
Do you want me to here? I can open it in another tab and see how many you have left.
As Emily opens in another tab,
You have 2 left.
All right. Jack is approaching the mountain, which you cannot, or the volcano or whatever it was that you cannot see. And now we are Can you read the titles on those books for me, please?
Math, Spanish, English, biology.
All right, so there's a different woman playing patty cake with a dog, and what does it say on the computer screen? I can't see that
Working
either.
on updates 20% complete. Don't turn off your computer.
Oh no. So this woman heard that Jack was coming up the hill, or coming up was Kate Bush running up the hill, and the Jack was climbing up the hill, or the volcano, and she was going to print out the recipe because he's only the woman that wrecked the goose. That was a store-bought goose, and now that he's going to get the giant's goose that goes, he's gonna have to slaughter that goose, and he doesn't know how to do that. So this woman and her helpful dog friend was going to help Jack slaughter the goose that laid the golden egg, so she went to download the slaughtering instructions, and lo and behold, Microsoft Windows had to update, and now they won't know how to slaughter the goose. Now I'm going to tie a bow on this with the final slide. Oh my goodness. Look at that. It's goose slaw. To the left is a bowl of slaw. It looks like it has strawberries and cabbage and chunks of goose in it. And the woman, there's two women. One is lifting weights and working out because she's already had her fill of goose slaw, and so she's got to work off those calories. And then the woman above the workout woman is sleeping peacefully and soundly because she's the one that had to slaughter the goose. So it didn't matter that the instructions couldn't be downloaded because she slaughtered the goose. And in the next slide, which you won't see, Jack gets to the top. He gets to take the leftover goose slaw down. The centurions they're still doing what they were doing, so they're not going to stop him. He's going to climb down with the goose slaw, climb back down the mountain, give it to the mom with the baby, and hopefully she'll she'll engage in reciprocity and repay with gratefulness this good deed and give him his pickle back. The end. How'd I do?
Well, it was very entertaining.
I think I explained what to do.
I don't think I learned how to save the Christmas goose.
Well, you then, if you weren't paying attention to my fascinating story, I told you exactly. So this Christmas, you better not burn the goose or drop the goose on the floor or put the goose accidentally in the garbage disposal, because you were not paying attention, and you will not know how to replace that goose because you were not paying attention.
So I think this is really fascinating because if you go back and listen to mine, I used the slides, but I like presented my points using the slides. You decided that each slide was part of a story. And we've talked about how to you everything is a story. And you told a story instead of presenting how to save the goose.
I told a story of what you should do. There was a moral of the story is this is what you should do if you ruin the goose. Now, it's funny that you mentioned that because there are two different kinds of Wiki-Hows. And you did the one kind, the step-by-step, one that says, here's the 6 steps to write a paper, or here's the 6 steps on how to cook the Christmas goose or whatever. And you chose that one. The other kind, not there isn't a storytelling kind like I did, but the other kind is there are 8 healthy habits that you can enjoy to help your mental health, and it'll be just 8 illustrations of those 8 habits. And so they don't lead from step 1 to step 2 to step 3. So I could have gone with Here are the 7 ways that you can replace your goose.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
didn't. I told a story instead. All right.
Well,
So now,
okay.
go ahead.
So because it was so entertaining,
Yes.
especially because Jack got the goose from the
Yes.
mountain, you get the you can do this
Yay.
mug.
Yes.
But in order to get
Oh, I get the.
this flash drive that's in this little pocket
I literally thought that was a floppy disk, and I was like,
with
"How old are
everything I
you?"
own, everything I've
Oh,
ever written.
is your novel on there?
Yeah, I think an older draft of it.
Oh, so I do get to read the novel.
Can you guess what the presentation was originally for?
Yeah, so it was really for what to do if you mess up the Christmas duck. No, 7 acts of no.
I will say I left out some slides because I kept it at 7, but I think there were like 10 or 11 of them.
Yeah, and mine I did the same. But I used the ones that illustrated it, the real thing the most. I didn't try to throw you off. So I would say that this would be like 7 healthy lifestyle habits or whatever. But the first one is the one throwing me off, where he's handing a pickle, which you call money, to the woman with the baby. So I'm gonna say it's healthy habits to make your life more fulfilling.
You're so close. It's How to Be a Better Person, a guide to self-improvement.
Oh, well, I was close. I do win the flash
You
drive.
were very I think that's close enough. So here's the flash drive.
Let me call my agent. I have these 4 novels. I will have them to you by the morning.
You know what's sad? One of them is gone. My first novel. I only have a print version of it. And it's an older version because I revised it after that. Anyway.
You know you can scan that, right? And it'll go into your computer.
I should do that. Well,
that happened to an early screenplay with mine, but I found it on an old thumb drive, and
I really should do that for sure.
All right. Well, guess what, Golden Goose?
We couldn't have done it with. Come on,
Pros.
We couldn't have done it.
Couldn't have done it without you.
Without you, goodness.